How's it, everybody? Welcome back to the Nomasburg region. Sanctum Gamer here. And we are 27 episodes in, and today we're going to be working on the train turntable. So this is something I'd wanted to build for quite a while, never really built it before. Never did it in any of my previous cities, so this was a nice build to actually do for me. So started off by laying the foundations, so a couple of roads to connect up this side to the other side of the railway tracks. I'd mentioned in the last video that I was gonna put a connection between the two, so I got that down. And now I'm just trying to get the bare bones shape of the area. So because the land here is elevated as compared to the other areas, I've put these breakwaters to kind of indicate that the land has been reinforced a bit to ensure that it doesn't erode away. And my thinking is that has been done, or that was done when this highway was built. So this town is going to be a bit of an oldish looking town, and it has undergone some modernization, some new things have been built. So a lot of effort was put in to try and secure the older parts of this town to make sure that they don't lose their history, I suppose. So this rail yard essentially is going to be quite big, because my thinking is that this town at some point was a thriving industrial town, and rail was a big part of this town and how it became what it became. So I wanted it to be heavily centered around rail, and that's why I am sparing no punches when it comes to the size of this rail that is running throughout this town. I want it to be the backbone. So with any town that has as much rail infrastructure as this town did, you would expect there to be at some point an area where engines would be able to turn around, or places where they would store a lot of spare train engines, cargo, and so on. So we've already built the cargo section of this rail yard. We did that way back in episode 21, I think, if I remember right. So this is a continuation of the rail yard. So this area again is meant to be the point where all the engines were kept, where engines would turn around. And in my mind, most of this rail traffic would be coming from, as you're looking at the screen now, from the left side and not the right side. So a lot of whatever was happening in this town would be exported out of this town to maybe a bigger city that exists somewhere else within the region. But as things have developed, this town is aging, and maybe it is sort of no longer as important and vital in the region. So places like this are slowly, what's the word I'm looking for? They're fading away, and a lot of the areas are no longer as well maintained as they might have been in the past. So this rail yard is meant to be a bit more old. This area of the rail yard is meant to be a bit more old, whereas the one that we built back in episode 21, which is the main rail yard where all the cargo sits, that is still a bit more used. So trains are constantly running, so that area looks a whole lot cleaner. Whereas here I'm going with the look of it's not as actively used, it's not as busy as the actual rail tracks. So those places are a bit more worn down. The concretes that you can see me placing all these cracked decals on to show that it's undergone quite a lot of wear and tear, and not a lot of maintenance is being put into this entire area. Now, when I did this, I put all these rail tracks around the actual turntable, and I realized that they were actually not enough, so I made more. Now, in reality, I think there will probably even be more. There's like almost no space wasted around turntables. But I think for the purposes of this, it's more than good enough. We've got quite a lot around the turntable. Now, I've put those ploppable asphalts over the turntable as well, but I'm going to get rid of those because I noticed that pretty much every turntable that I looked at when I did some Googling, it all was like hollow-ish because the wheels of the actual turntable sat within the bottom part and the rail thing rotated the engines and so on. So I will get rid of those ploppable asphalts at some point. But the whole aim of this is to get that old feel, that old look. So these decals that I've put down achieve that look perfectly well. But again, it's not meant to be just a storage area. I kind of figured there's some kind of servicing as well that happens here. So all these warehouses that I've placed towards the bottom and there at the top, those I guess are a bit more used. They're not as worn down as the actual surrounding areas. But yeah, in the end, I think the turntable turned out quite nice. I really like this old look of a town that is wearing down, because that's really the theme I want to go for in this town as a whole. So Charlestown is a little bit more neat, it's a little cleaner. I didn't have as many worn down areas over there, whereas this town is going to be almost the exact opposite, where it is going to be a whole lot more worn down, and I'm hoping that I can get that look nice. And you saw I moved all those ploppable asphalts out of the way, and I think that looks a whole lot better. I quite like the fact that there was that empty space around the actual turntable, allowing you to put the type of ground that you want around it. So this could have very easily been gravel completely around, and this turntable almost still fit in quite nicely. But yeah, all these engines that we see, my thinking is these engines got parked here, and some of them have been sitting there for who knows how long, and so the whole place again is just undergoing wear and tear. And then behind the warehouse, I put a few more train tracks with the intention that with the servicing that might have been happening and the storage that might be happening with all these engines, we've got this part on the other side of the shed or the warehouses where the engines would come and be placed for longer term storage, or if they needed some sort of servicing that couldn't be done in the actual warehouses. Now, this town at some point gonna get a story for it, but the general idea I've kind of shared it with you. But we're gonna have little mini builds, should I call them mini builds, or areas in the town that will have their own unique stories as well. So for example, this turntable or this rail yard area, why has it been abandoned? What is it about this that is not as actively used? And then have all these stories scattered around the town, and then bring it all together as one massive story that explains the history of this whole town. So that's the thinking, but we will get to the stories when we get to it. When we're ready to get a story for an area, I will announce it, and then we'll just open up the Discord server or the Discord channel for that to happen. So yeah, this is slightly longer term storage. I put down these crane assets, crane lifting assets, as a way to show that the servicing was happening here. They had mechanisms or whatever the term is, that are used to lift and move heavy engines up and about on these actual railway tracks. But this is not the end of the railway tracks. We are going to expand it. We're going to merge it into other lanes that will actually take us to the rail yard in general. But I think the look of this area, in terms of it looking a bit more of a service station, is something that I really wanted to capture over there. And then here we finally put everything together so that we can start seeing some traffic coming in and out of this place. Because the road had not been connected yet, this whole time that I've been building, there's been no real vehicles coming in and out. So you see those warehouses there to the top right complaining about, I think it's not having enough resources or whatever it is. But yeah, this is the final high level view of the rail infrastructure and how everything connects up. We're going to connect up these rail lines into the actual warehouses, just to show that the servicing that happens on the engines that were here was not just outdoors, but when the need arises, the engines could be taken directly into the warehouses and they could then be serviced over there. So yeah, you can see the surrounding rail yard. To the top of the screen is the main train station of this town, and that kind of contradicts its immediate surroundings, where the surroundings are more worn down with all this foliage growing through everything, whereas that station is a lot more modern. So I wanted it to look as though that station has been recently built, or was built after this whole rail yard and everything took shape, and some time and money was invested to make it look a bit nicer. But I also wanted it to look like it was built after the fact, so it wasn't anything that was planned right from the beginning, but it was done to fit in with the existing surrounding area, so to speak. Yeah, but this again is not the end of this rail yard actually, so we're gonna expand it a lot more. Like I said, I want the rail to be the main centerpiece of this town, so I wanted to get the rail infrastructure in place. I wanted to ensure that where I wanted all rail yards to be, railway tracks, stations and so on, were in place, and then from this point on we'll develop the rest of the town around it. Another thing is, when I was building all of this, all the rail tracks, if you notice, have got all these catenaries on them. Now I got the catenary replacer, but the catenary replacer replaces the catenaries across all railway lines on the map, which is not really what I wanted. What I wanted was to remove the catenaries on just these lines running through this rail yard area. So I did some searching, and eventually I realized that network extensions can actually do that. I actually had no idea network extensions could replace catenaries. I was always under the impression that I could only use it for replacing things like trees and changing the colors of roads, lights and so on. So I was pleasantly surprised when I realized that it can actually replace catenaries on a per segment level. So yeah, if that's something you are looking for, grab that as well. So after we do all of this building, I got the network extensions, and then I go over the entire yard to remove all the catenaries on each of the rail lines. And I think it made it look a whole lot better, a lot more realistic compared to it sitting here with all these wires running on top of it. So yeah, that is the rail yard in a nutshell. I've got all the engines in place. I think I captured the look that I wanted quite nicely of the ran down area with all the foliage growing through cracks in the concrete. I think I'm quite happy with how all of this turned out. The look for me fits perfectly with what I wanted. Now I want to carry this look throughout the rest of the town. So when we build commercial areas, when we build the residential areas, we're going to have areas that are quite run down as well, and we'll have a couple of places where it is also a bit more developed. And yeah, that is pretty much it for this episode. Next one, we will continue the expansion of this rail yard a little bit more before we actually start building the town itself around all of this. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some inspiration in it. And I can't wait to actually expand out everything around here. I'm actually really enjoying building this Nomasburg area out. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for joining me for another episode. If you liked it, please give the video a thumbs up. Leave a comment. Let me know what you would like to see. And yeah, I'll catch you all in the next one. Cheers everybody.